what I want you to do is I need you to be in the Basics tab, and we're going to start to make our adjustments. But before we do that, I have a little bit of a beef with the way this stuff is set up. I firmly believe that the camera calibration stuff should be either up here or it should be the first tab. I am going to explain to you my logic, and then you can kind of do whatever you want to do. I'm going to click on the camera calibration tab. Up here we have the process version. That's the mathematical algorithms that are used to what they call demosaic or process interpret your raw data into something visual that we can see on screen. And there are a couple of different versions in here. 2003 was one of the most recent versions of Camera Raw, and back in 2003 this was an amazing thing. Then 7 years later we end up with Process 2010. This was such a drastic improvement from 2003. A lot of photographers went back and reinterpreted their favorite images using the 2010 process. It was absolutely stunning. Noise reduction was the biggest thing that was improved in this. It was absolutely stunning what we were able to get. Now we have 2012. The 2012 process is the most current one. Some believe it is the best. Others are not quite so sure. I'm kind of this and that, and it all depends on the mood I wake up in, I guess. But if you've never used Camera Raw before, stick with the 2012. You'll get used to it and then move on. Maybe I just don't like change, and I liked what was going on with the 2010 one. Maybe it's because I understood it better because I used it for a while anyways. What I'm getting at is we have 3 different methods. Please stay with the 2012, go back to 2010. I don't know any reason why the 2003 is still available to us. It was so bad compared to these guys. Let's just move on. Even if we were to stay with the 2012 process, the camera profile default that Adobe Camera Raw goes to is Adobe Standard. If I click on this, you can see that we have a couple of different options in here. You may see different things if you're shooting with a Nikon than the DX2 mode 1, 2, and 3. These are showing up only because the generation that this camera, the D70S, was the D2X line was the top of the line, blah, 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 and it's all that stuff. If you're shooting with a D7000 or whatever it is, you probably won't see that. It doesn't matter. As long as you have landscape, neutral, portrait, standard, vivid, that's all that really counts. Adobe is assuming that you want to live in their world, and I'm not quite sure that that's the best world to be living in. I'm thinking maybe I might want to, and it doesn't matter what camera manufacturer you have, you might want to be in your own camera's standard profile. See how that changed? I like that better than the Adobe interpretation. It's up to you. If I now come over here and choose the 2012, I'm going to have more contrast in my image. I don't know if you noticed it, I'm not really fond of what happened in the colors up here at this point, but I prefer, at this point, I prefer using the 2012 process with the camera standard profile. Now, if I wanted things to be a little more vivid, obviously I would choose this, and you can see that the contrast is increased for more vividness. I'm going to go back to standard. You can see how that changes. If I went all the way over to neutral, the image will get flatter, not as contrasty. Keep an eye on the histogram, you'll see it changes. If I go to landscape, it's going to be almost as contrasty and vibrant as the vivid one, but not quite. And if I come back over to this one, you can see there's a slight difference. Portrait mode is, well, it's not as contrasty. I believe portrait mode is less contrasty than the standard, and it makes sense that it would be. And it's also being kinder to the reds inside the image. All right, for obvious reasons, portrait skin tones generally have a fair amount of red in them. So it's being kinder to that and obviously less contrasty. So I'm going to choose the standard option here. I'm not even going to deal with this kind of stuff, but if you find that your camera is constantly, producing images that are a little bit too much this or too much that, then what you can do is you can come in and play around with these sliders, and then you can come in here and you can actually create a preset or change the default for Camera Raw for your specific camera and all that kind of stuff. I haven't found anybody that really needs to go in and do this at this point in time because the sensors are so much better than they were 10 years ago. So now, once I've gone through this kind of thing, then I would want to come back over to the Basics tab and then start my process of going through the white balance, the exposure, the contrast, highlights, shadows, whites, blacks, clarity, vibrance, saturation in that tab, and then move. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to exit out of this dialog box, and I'm going to open up another image, and I'm going to show you some of the differences between the different processes. You're going to be totally amazed, flabbergasted to say the least, of the quality we're allowed to get today versus what we were able to get years and years ago.